All right, guys, welcome back to Hoy No Más podcast. Today I have a special guest. I have none other than Chelo Bini, my girlfriend. Say hi to the people, Chelo.
Hi, guys. Again. I'm here again.
So Chelo has come out in my channel right, I think at the very beginning since I built this studio. And this is her second time. The first time we talked about a little bit of our relationship. And then we dived a little into her brain surgery. So you guys, if you guys want to watch that podcast, make sure you guys click on that video, watch it, and that way you guys can get to know us a little bit better. Also, you guys can know a little bit of her story and her journey with her going through brain surgery. Luckily, it's even a miracle that she's here. So I appreciate you a lot, Chelo. Yeah.
All right, let's get started.
Oh, okay. Chelo.
Okay.
Are you ready? Welcome to Hoy No Más podcast with Angel Houseman.
All right, guys. So thank you guys for tuning in. Like I mentioned, I have Chelo here. We're going to be talking about ayahuasca. One of the main reasons why we wanted to touch on this subject is because it's happened before that we've mentioned to some friends about ayahuasca, and it seems that some of them have never heard of ayahuasca in general, and other people that have heard of ayahuasca, they have a bad perception of ayahuasca. Reason why is because we're not educated as a community, as a population, right? My point of view when it comes down to ayahuasca is that a lot of people, they see that as a recreational thing, and it's completely the total opposite. I think when you and I, Chelo, when we do it, we take it very serious, because it's something that you have to have a lot of respect for, and you actually have to prepare yourself. 2 weeks prior, you have to diet, you have to eat no meat, you have to drink pure water, pretty much you avoid red meats, so on and so forth. We're going to get into this whole topic right now, but that was the main purpose why we wanted to do this specific subject here on the Hoy No Más podcast. Chelo, do you want to begin?
What do you want to know, and I'll tell you.
Okay, so let's start with, when was the first time that you heard of ayahuasca? Was it because I brought it up?
Yeah, you brought it up. That was the very first time that I heard of it.
Okay.
I had never heard of it from anybody else or anything.
That's crazy, right? That I had just finished saying that a lot of people don't know about it, right? Mm-mm. And why do you think the government, why do you think the population, the people don't know about it?
Well, you kind of said it right now, because other people or the government, they don't want us to know about it. Because I think that, ayahuasca is not for everybody, and that's something that's fine. But I feel like through ayahuasca, you can unlock your true inner self, or you can find yourself. And imagine if everybody found their self and their true purpose, how powerful we would be as a society. Yeah. Imagine how much things will change rather than how it is right now.
Right. And the thing is, there's a quote out there that I think I've shared it with you, right? That it says, the government doesn't teach you or doesn't put it out there in the media for the population, not for your safety or because it cares for you, but they don't want you to discover all these past traditions that we've lost throughout humanity, right? Mm-hmm. So a little backstory with ayahuasca, I guess the legend says that ayahuasca was found by the shamans, right, in the Amazon, that the plant itself told the shamans, hey, you have to mix these two plants together to create this tea, this drink. And now you got to put it into perspective. In the Amazon, there's thousands of plants out there. But for some reason, the plant itself, the spirit of the plant told the shamans to mix these two plants together to create this amazing plant medicine. So yeah, taking it back to that, Chelo. So I guess we can start with let's start with your journey. Yeah. So tell us about. I know right now I was mentioning that you have to diet, that you have to that you have to diet, you have to kind of cleanse yourself. Did you end up doing that? I don't remember if you fully did it or not.
Yeah, I did it. So, long story short, when the first time I did ayahuasca was about 2 years ago. Yeah, it was 2 years ago because we were together already. And I remember that you had told me about it since like the first. Yeah, I think it was the first time that you did it, if I'm not wrong. Like Angel had told me about it a long time ago, and I remember the first time he did ayahuasca, and I was like, "Oh, that kind of looks interesting," but I didn't feel like it was my time for me to do it. Or, I mean, I've been through a lot of stuff, but I just feel like at that point in my life, it wasn't like something like, "Oh shoot, like I really want to do it right now. Like I need something, like I don't know, whatever. I need like." To find an answers to something. I didn't feel like that at that certain point, so I was just kind of like, oh, that looks like something that I would want to do, but it's not the time right now. So then I did ayahuasca. I think it was April of 2021, since it was 2 years ago. And yeah, I did end up dieting. I remember for like 2 weeks I ate like, I didn't eat meat or chicken. I was eating like fish and like vegetables and stuff like that. I mean, I wasn't eating like I wasn't on the best diet, but I was eating better than what I usually eat on the daily basis. So for 2 weeks I was just eating like seafood basically.
Yeah. Okay, so the 2 weeks pass by, you do your diet, and then once walk us in because a lot of people don't know the process, right? But once you dieted and everything, walk us in how. Because everybody does it differently, and maybe some people do it out in Peru, but for us, we do it here locally, right? Or we've done it locally. Mm-hmm. When you go to the shaman's location, do you right away take the beverage? Walk us in the process for your experience there at the location we've been to.
So when you get there, I mean, first they give you like a little talk, but you have to wait for everybody to get there, obviously. So once...
Who's everybody?
Like the other people that are doing ayahuasca.
Oh, okay.
Because there can be up to, I think it's like 10 people that do it at a time, if I'm not wrong. So once everybody gets there, the shaman's wife, she like walks you through and what you can feel, which can be like the purging, which can be throwing up, going to the bathroom, crying, laughing, and I don't know if there's something, I don't remember if there's something else.
Yeah, like Chelo was mentioning is with ayahuasca, you have to purge one way or another, right? You either, like Chelo was saying, you're either going to be laughing a lot, you're going to be throwing up, you're going to be using the restroom. Some people don't even do any of that. Some people just sleep throughout the whole experience, right? And one of the key things is that you at times go with a purpose, with an intention to go to ayahuasca because you want to receive a specific thing, but it's something that you have to be aware of. You have to go with an open mind and be willing to receive whatever the plant is going to give, because a lot of people get upset when they just see no visions, they just sleep, or they're like, you know what, I didn't feel anything. But the thing is, maybe that was your purpose, or maybe the purpose was for you just to be at peace, right? And
to rest.
Yeah, to rest and cleanse your mind. So it's happened to other people. We know people that have received no messages. They've just slept or just cried a lot. But Chelo here, she actually had quite a few. She's done it twice, like she mentioned, and she received a lot of messages, and she's going to get into that shortly. So now once they have the talk with you, the shaman's wife, what's next?
So once you go through the talk, if people have questions, they answer that. So then that's when it's time to go to the room where everybody's gonna, basically you have like a little bed. Everybody has like a little bed, and then you lay down on it. And there's a bunch of like, what do they call them? The things that are on the wall.
Like posters?
Yeah, like posters, but like I don't know how to explain them. Like there's like different animals and like different like symbols, and those animals and symbols are throughout the whole room. So you go and pick a space and you sit down, and then once everybody's situated, the shaman goes around and he like drops off, like he gives you the tea. And then before you take the tea, you have to like tell the tea what you would like to figure out or know or whatever you want to do. But you got to keep in mind that even if you tell them like, oh, I want to know what my future is, it is never going to tell you. It might tell you what you want to know, but it's going to give you what you need.
Yeah.
So once you take the tea, I want to say, oh, well, it depends, because once you take the tea, there's a lot of people that need a second shot like you do. And if you don't need it, like, then you don't. But I'll say, like, I don't know how long it takes, but I want to say probably like a good 30 minutes, because you lose notion of time. Like, you're fully awake. Like, if you want to go to the bathroom, you can go to the bathroom, but you just don't have your phone with you. Like, it's not like, oh my God, I'm going to record this and that. Like, no. But like after you take the tea, it probably goes in like to 30 minutes for it to be like at its full effect.
Yeah, I agree. And like Chelo, like you were mentioning, so you take the tea for like you said, for 30 minutes or times even an hour, right? I've had to take 2 shots. For some reason, I don't know if it was going to eventually kick in or not, but I just see everybody going in, and we'll talk about what going in is, right? But for me, I've always, the 2 times that I've been, I've gone two times or 3 times.
No, you've done it 3 times.
Oh, yeah, 3 times. The 3 times that I've gone, I've had to take 2 shots. But, okay, so you take it, you wait, the 30 minutes happen, and then...
And then that's when you start seeing visions or feeling things.
How do you feel when you take it? What do you recall you feel? Do you feel the sensation?
Like, I remember the first time I can feel like, I remember I would move my hands, and I remember I had my eyes open and I was going like this. And I can feel like kind of like literally the energy flowing from one side to another. Like, it's just things that you see and you feel that you don't see and feel like in this what we see and feel right now in the physical or the 3D world.
So you feel the medicine going through your body,
yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that you become
one with the medicine.
Yeah, you become one, and you start your senses, your feelings enhance.
Oh yeah,
right?
100%.
That's why you feel like what is this? You start like even like feeling your body. You're able to hear a lot more clear, right? Like even before, I think at one point when we were pulling up, I would hear, at times you hear the crickets or things like that next to a bush or something, and I would literally hear like the Amazon, like everything was so enhanced, and every little noise, it was so enhanced. It just, your senses like skyrocket up. Okay, so Chelo, so now you start feeling it. You start feeling the medicine going in through your body. Then what's next?
And I remember that, like, I didn't know if I was going into it or not. And so my first time that I went to do ayahuasca, it was Angel's second time. Was it your second time or third? No, it was your second.
Yeah, and
anyways, Angel went with me. So Angel was sitting I was in the corner, and Angel was sitting to my right side, so there was nobody to my left. And I remember that I could feel, like, I didn't know if I was going into it or not. So I was like, maybe I should get another shot, because I remember the shaman asking if people needed another shot. And I clearly remember Angel, like, I was laying on my right side, and me and Angel were looking at each other. And he was like, is it hitting you? And I was like, I don't think so. But I remember, like, speaking, and I don't know if like, in my head, it sounded like my speech was blurred. Like when you're drunk, almost. Like, I remember I felt like I sounded like that. And I remember Angel was like, oh, do you feel like the medicine is kicking in? And then I was like, I don't know. And Ricardo, the shaman, was like, raise your hand if you need another shot, or like sit up. And I remember I tried like putting my hand up, or like sitting up, and I couldn't do it. Like, literally, I felt like something was, like, on me that I couldn't do it. And I was like, okay, maybe, like, I don't need it. But then I still felt like time was passing. And like I said, you lose track of time. So I didn't know how long. If I'd been... Maybe to me, it felt like 30 minutes, and it had been 5 minutes. And I felt like it was just not doing anything. And I kept like tossing and turning and doing all these kinds of things. And at one point I was like, okay, like maybe I should just close my eyes. And I did close my eyes and I kind of went in, and then I got kind of scared and I opened them and I was like, no, let me just try them open. And I just kept messing around to the point that I was like, you know what? No, you're just going to close your eyes. And I closed them. And when I closed my eyes, that's when I went fully in on the first time. Okay, I went fully in on the first time. And I remember that one of the first things, oh my God. One of the first things that I saw on my first time, well, one of the first things that I felt was like this old, like the viejita energy, like a grandma energy. And I saw her, and when I say her, I could feel her and I could listen to her, and it sounded like a woman, but I never saw her face. Like her face was just like a bright light, and I could just basically see from her shoulders down. But to me, she sounded and she looked like a woman, right? And next to her, it was this little being that I knew was a man, because he sounded like a man and he behaved like a man and everything. But till this day, like even Angel has asked me, like he looked like deformed. And when I say deformed, I guess the best way to explain it is like he looked like a what did I tell you he looked like? Not a crossword puzzle, but
yeah, like all pieced together, right?
Yeah, like he had a weird shape.
Yeah.
Como un rompecabezas, like una pieza de un rompecabezas. That's what he looked like. Yeah,
he had like a bunch of different like pieces. Maybe his eye kind of like in different locations.
Yeah,
maybe?
Everything was like in different locations.
So wait, so I kind of lost you a bit. So you were saying, so the first thing when you kicked in, that was the first thing you saw right away?
So it was, okay, hold on. Let me go in. Okay, so the first thing I seen was the word feelings.
Okay.
It was all black, and literally the only thing that I saw was the word feelings. And then that's when I saw that.
Okay, wait. So you finally feel the medicine going in, right?
Yes.
You feel it. You close your eyes. You were scared, right? You were like kind of, oh shit. So you close your eyes again, right?
Yes.
And then you close once you have your eyes closed at this point.
Yes.
And then you see the word feelings?
Yes.
Okay, walk us in through that.
Okay, so I see the word feelings, and then I feel this freaking hand. Literally, I felt a hand touching my face. And then she said, like, she was talking to me in Spanish, and that's when I heard her. And then I was like, oh my God, it sounded like it gives you an older, like, abuelita vibe. And she was like, oh, like, I'm so glad you're here, da-da-da-da-da, like basically telling me there was so much that I had to go through, like that they were gonna walk me through. So then eventually I see her, and it's this lady. It's literally like a woman's body. I couldn't see her face because her face just looked bright, but I can hear her. And then it's this little like weird little being that's a guy.
So so you see the word feelings, and she's like, oh, we need to take you through all this journey. Right? And then right away you see the creature?
Yes.
Okay. But do you get to see Mother Ayahuasca? You don't see her?
I saw her body, but I never see her face. I can hear her. Like, I can see from her neck down, but her face is just, like, bright. Like, I can never see a face.
Okay.
It's just como si tuviera una luz enfrente, and I can never see her face. But I can hear her.
Cool.
So then her and the little being are like, okay, we're going to, take you through this journey, but we have to take you back to, we have to start with your feelings first. And she's like, okay, like, she was like, okay, like, we're going to take you through what each feeling feels like. And then she started going through, like, sadness, angriness, everything. And then I remember she ended it with happiness. And she said, this is what happened. This is how you're supposed to be or feel like when you're happy. And I remember at that point, I was like, oh my God, because I felt like for years, I detached myself from my emotions. I don't want to cry. from my emotions to be able to be like in this like survival mode, that I forgot what that last emotion felt like, which was happiness. So she was like, okay, we're gonna take you through everything. And I remember she finished with happiness, and she was like, this is what that is supposed to feel like. And she was like, oh, I bet you hadn't felt like that, or you didn't even remember that that's how you were supposed to feel in a very long time. And that's when it made me think, and I was like, oh my God, it's true. Like, I have not felt like that in forever. So then I remember, like, I'm feeling all these emotions, and I'm going back and forth with them. And as I go through the emotions, I'm like laughing and crying back and forth. So I'm like in this feeling side, and everything is like love and like hugs and everything. And then I remember that the little being, that it's weird looking, he's like, okay, now that you know how all your feelings are, like, now that you know how you're supposed to feel, like through being angry, being happy, being this, being that, we're gonna take you to the beginning. And he's like, so for that, we have to start at your childhood. And when he said that, I was like, oh, like, I did not want to, like, I knew what I was gonna see, but I didn't want to go there. And he was like, come on, like, we have to start at your childhood. So I remember, like, at that point, I turned to my left, and I see, like, this black hallway, and there's, like, a little white light at the end. And he's like, we have to walk down there, and we have to start from the beginning. And I was like, no. I remember telling him clearly, I was like, I'm not going to go with you because I don't even know you, and I can't trust you. And he was like, if you really want to heal, you have to trust me, even if you don't know me. And we were going back and forth until I was like, you know what? Okay, I'll go with you. So I did. And we go back to the beginning. And I remember that the first things that I see when they took me back to the beginning, it was literally a picture of an ultrasound. And it was like, if it was this black wall and there was an like when you're like at the ultrasound place and they're like looking at the baby, and it was a black wall or this black back thing, and there was a picture of an ultrasound, and then there was a little sack. And he said, oh, you see that there? And then I was like, yeah. And he's like, that's you. And then I was like, he's like, that's like your mom's, like, that's when you were in your mom's belly. And I was like, what the heck? Like, it was weird because it was like, I'm looking at myself when I was in there. Like, I'm literally going that back in time because I thought they were going to start when I was a couple years old, or what I can remember. And he was like, no, we're going to start here. So from there, he starts going on basically throughout my life until that time frame. And yeah, so what else do you want to know?
No, continue.
Oh, okay. So he starts there, and he was like, okay, like, this is when you were like when you were in your mom's belly, que no sé qué. And then he was like, okay, like, we know you have a lot of questions and you want to know, like, you know, because when things happen to you, you're like, why me? Like, why did this happen to me? And he's like, we're going to walk you through everything, and you're going to understand why everything has happened to you in the way that it's happened. So from there, we go through, like, me looking at my mom's ultrasound. And then, what else do we go through? I feel like that was one of the first things that, like, really stuck to me, of me being in my mom's belly. And then I remember afterwards, I don't remember everything exactly, and I feel like it's kind of annoying me right now because then you told me, like, a long time ago to, like, record everything. But I do remember, like, seeing people, or like family members that are not here anymore, including my grandpa. I saw my dad as a kid. I saw Angel's dad. I saw Angel. And then I saw a bunch of things about the future that I don't want to talk about. But what I can tell you guys is when I saw Angel, I remember, keep in mind, Angel was to my right side, right? So I'm in like ayahuasca, like Mother Ayahuasca shows me all these things from the future, right? And she basically tells me that Angel's my soulmate. And then I remember, keep in mind, I'm like giving my back to Angel, and Angel's like facing my back. So literally in the trance of me like going through all these visions, I can clearly hear Angel on the background crying, and he was like, oh, like help me, I'm dying. And I was like, oh my god, like he's dying. And I really thought like he was dying, like literally dying. And I kept trying to turn around, and again I could not turn around. And ayahuasca was like, no, you have to let him die. And I was like, what do you mean I have to let him die? Like, you just told me all these things, and now you're telling me to let him die? And she's like, no, he's not literally dying. He's just like, she basically said like his old self is dying. And what I always tell Angel, that what I concluded from that message is that a lot of the times when you date other partners, like previous partners, you tend to have, like, those people always leave things behind with you. And I feel like it was his old self that was dying, literally, from everything in his past. Not that he literally was dying, but I feel like that one was pretty scary, because I really felt like he was dying. But then she was like, no, you have to like basically let him die, because he's not dying in body, he's just dying like in another way.
Yeah, and just to giving you guys a perspective, so I think this was the second time that I did ayahuasca, I believe, right? A second or third time, whatever it is, right? But this time that I went with Chelo, my main goal was for her to have a good experience, right? So my main focus was like, oh, like I want to make sure that she has a good experience, that she receives whatever messages that she's supposed to receive. But for me, I literally didn't really receive much. It was very, very physical to me. Like this time around, I threw up a lot. I was throwing up a lot. Even when we came back home, right? Like I was still throwing up.
Yeah, you were
right?
throwing up over here in the bathroom.
It felt really, really bad. But the thing is, a lot of people will get scared with this. But the thing is, it's a journey. It's a journey that people have to go through. Why? Because at times, this purging is important, right? Because a lot of these times that when people get angry, when people, as simple as getting cut off at the freeway, like, oh, this guy, like you have all this bad energy, maybe at work, maybe your partner, you have all this bad energy, it's stored inside of you. And believe it or not, all this energy consumes you in the inside, and we never let this emotions out, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever the case is, this while Chelo is having her experience, me being next to her, it's very, very physical. So I throw up a lot in this ceremony that we both went together. However, like we first stated, all these things that the medicine provides you and gives you is because one way or another you need it, right? Mm-hmm. So even though I was kind of not upset, right? But obviously you want to go and see visions and possibly see questions or receive answers, right? But the thing is, you never know what to expect. And for me, these two times, the last times that I went, were physical, and I purged a lot. So when Chelo was telling me that my old version of me was dying, it really felt like I was dying, because I was just throwing up so much. I was purging a lot. I have another video where I talk about my own experience. Eventually, maybe I'll do it into a podcast form, because last time it was just me in front of the camera. But in that one, it was completely the total opposite. I received so many messages, beautiful messages. I cried of happiness. I cried of so much love that I was receiving. But for these two last ones, it was a lot physical for me. So that's, while you were receiving all those messages, that's how I was feeling, right? Let me ask you this. In the first time, would you want to touch base on the baby or no?
I feel like I'm going to cry, and I don't want to cry.
But do you want to or no? It's because it's at the same time, it's part of the journey.
Okay.
Do you
I'll
want to?
explain it.
Okay. So, for the people that don't know, Chelo has um, had a miscarriage in the past, right? And you saw a little bit of that in your first ceremony, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to tell us how that went?
Okay.
And the only reason, babe, I tell you that to share that is because it's part of our journey. And eventually, if God blesses us with a kid, it's just documented of the things that we went through, and even things that were presented to you. That's the only reason why I'm saying it. And because at the end of the day, that baby or whatever was part of us.
Okay. I'll tell you guys, I'm trying my hardest not to cry. So, the main reason why I went to do ayahuasca in the first place was because of miscarriage, because I literally felt like I was losing my freaking shit. And like I said at the beginning, I've been through a lot of stuff, but I feel like I've always been able to hold myself pretty well. But with the whole baby thing, that was just like a whole nother level. And I think I mentioned this in the past, because it got to the point that I was like, fuck, like, what's the point of me being with Angel? Like, it got to the point that I was literally questioning my relationship, even though that had nothing, like, I don't know, I was just questioning every little freaking thing. And I was like, what's the purpose of us being together if we're not gonna have a baby anymore? Like, I don't know, I was just going down really bad. And I feel like in the past I've gone down bad, but I don't know, this one took me to a whole nother level. So when I was around 3 or 4, I want to say 4, my grandpa passed away, which he's my mom's dad. So he's the one that I saw in ayahuasca, right? And even though you might think like, oh my gosh, you were 3 or 4, like, how do you even remember stuff? I have a really good memory. Like, I can remember things that a lot of people can't remember. It's crazy. So I remember a lot of things about him. And I've always remembered him like that, right? And for years, I used to cry to him when I was a kid. And like, I would always say like, oh my gosh, I want to dream about you or like something. And I would never dream about him. So when I was doing ayahuasca the first time, when it was showing me like my mom and all that, it showed me like other childhood stuff.
Is this tied into the baby thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why I was mentioning my grandpa. So I'm like, ayahuasca is like, she was like, oh, like, we're gonna tell you the main reason why, like, we know what you wanted to come, which one of the main things was that, right? So there's this big like hill, and it's really grassy, and there's like a dirt road, and there's like a little fence beside the dirt road, right? And she's like, oh, like, you wanted to know, like, you wanted to know what happened with your baby and all of that. And I remember when I was pregnant, I always felt that I was going to have a girl. I don't know why, but I always felt that I was going to have a girl. And then I remember her, like, I was looking around, and there was this big grassy, like, hill, and it was all green. Like, everything was, like, the colors were super vivid, and there was this little dirt trail, and then next to the dirt trail, there's, like, a white picket fence. And she was like, well, like, you've always wanted to know what it feels like to be a mom, so I'm gonna let you feel that way for a couple minutes. And when I look at, like, I'm looking at everything else, and then when I look at her, she's literally carrying a baby in a pink blanket. And she's like, but you always knew you were gonna have a girl. She's like, you've been knowing this all the time. She's like, so I don't have to, like, reinstate that because you know that. And I was like, oh shit, like, like, what I felt was like true. So she gives me the baby in the pink blanket. Keep in mind, I can never see her face. I can just feel her, but I can never see her face. I don't know why. So she lets me carry her, and when she gives me her, she tells me, okay, I'm gonna give you your daughter basically, but you're gonna have to give her back in a couple of minutes. Okay, so Mother Ayahuasca is holding the baby. She's holding her in a pink blanket. She tells me that I can have her, but she says, you can have her for a little bit, but then you're going to have to give her back. And I said, like, okay. So when I agree to that, she gives me the baby, and I carry her. And the minute I feel her and I carry her, it's like if I went through labor like this. Because I remember I saw, like a movie of being in labor, and it was like in split seconds me being in labor. Obviously I didn't feel anything, but I felt like I was in labor. And then Mother Ayahuasca was like, oh, like right now you're gonna experience what it feels like to be a mom. But then she says, but you've always been a mom. I don't know what she meant like with that, but she said that. So she said that, and I was like, okay. And till this day I don't know what that means. And she says, I'm like, okay. So she goes into stuff about the future that I'm not going to touch about. But at the end, those minutes are up. So I have to give her back. And she's like, she tells me like, oh, like basically your time's up. You have to give her back. And at this point, it's like no. Like, even though I had just agreed to do that, obviously, I felt like at that point I was like, no, why am I going to do this? So keep in mind, there was this little dirt trail in the grassy field. And far away, I see this man walking. I can't see his face because he's too far away, but I know it's a man by what he's wearing. I see a man walking away. I mean, coming towards me, but I'm just ignoring him, and I just turn around. And, I'm like going back and forth with her and the little guy being, and I was like, no, like, why am I going to give her back if she's mine? Da-da-da-da-da. And by the minute that me and her are arguing, I turn back around, and it's probably like a couple feet. I turn back around, and the man that was walking from that little trail was my grandpa, which was my mom's dad. So I see him, and I'm looking at him, and I was like, what the heck? Like, you're here? And I remember looking at him, and I was like, there was like a million questions coming to my head. Like, why did you leave? Why this? Why that? But the look that he gave me, it literally just said, I'm just here to do one thing, and I'm out. Like, I'm not answering none of your questions. And I remember that he was just standing there, and she told me, okay, if you don't want, she said, if you don't want to give her back to me, don't give her to me, but give it to him, to my grandpa. So then I look at him, and he says, he says in Spanish, he's like, ¿te acuerdas como así como yo te cuidaba a ti, la voy a cuidar a ella? That's what he told me. So when he said that, I was like, okay. And that, I feel like they knew that was probably the only way that I was going to let her go. So then I say my goodbyes, and he grabs her, and he looks at her, and he smiles, and then he turns around, he walks away. And then I never see him again.
That's crazy, babe.
Yeah.
And when he turns away, what happens next? Do you continue feeling that? What's next?
That's when it went more into detail about like future stuff.
Okay. Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, and that's the thing too. There's something that like Chelo was mentioning before that was that it's been so long that she's not fully remembering everything. Yeah, she remembers some of it because that she's probably not going to speak on. Eventually, if everything God willing, everything manifests, we'll go into detail. But I've told her before, record your experience, because it's very important at the moment. Everything is so vivid, right? Everything's so vivid. You remember all these details, but time passes by. It's like, so when you have a conversation with somebody, eventually you're not going to remember everything. So it's very important to either write it down, record yourself, even if it's just a voice memo, because you receive so many messages in a span of a couple hours. So the experience itself, it's about what would you say, like a 5 hours, approximately 5-6 hours, I think.
Yeah, 5-6 hours.
Yeah, because usually the times that we've been, it's been like from around 6 to like midnight, approximately, right? And people are gonna be like, "What? It's a lot." But the thing is, like Chelo's mentioned, you don't feel any of the time that you're there. It honestly feels like you want to experience it more, right?
Yeah.
You're like, and for me at least, when we've done with ayahuasca ceremonies, when you're done with it. It almost feels like you land back to earth.
Yeah,
right?
like your soul comes back to your body.
Yeah, you feel like you're just back. Even though you're still conscious, you're able to go to use the restroom. You're able to be yourself, right? One of my biggest worries was that I don't like to be not in control of a specific situation, and that was one of my fears before going into ayahuasca. I just didn't want to be not in control. But the thing is, not once that I've experienced of done ayahuasca, I've never felt like that. In the other hand, it's been very peaceful. Yeah, I've purged, but at the same time, I'm there. I never do I feel like, oh, I want to snap out of it or any of that. Like, not at all. Like, it's just a journey that you're going through while you're going through this healing and journey with the ceremony. So what else is it that we haven't mentioned that you think it will be important, or maybe another one that you remember? Because I'm trying to remember your experience, the first experience.
That's what I'm trying to think about, because I know I saw my grandpa. I'll talk about the one of my dad.
Is that from your first experience?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But something that I do want to mention though is that the first two. Well, I mean, I've just done it 2 times, but the times that I've done it, to me, my experience, I mean, I don't know if it's just me or what else, but the times that I've done it, for me, it's like if we're having a conversation right now, like the podcast, I ask them something, they give me an answer. I ask them this, they give me that. Like, it's just crazy, because I know Angel has done it, his friend, his cousin, my mom, and I remember my mom going into it, and I feel like she probably thought that she was gonna have the same type of experience that I've had, of me asking all these freaking questions and having all these answers, and she never does. And I don't know if she gets frustrated or whatnot, but at least for me, it's always been like literally a conversation of like, I want to know this, they give me an answer. I want to know that, they give me an answer, and it's just crazy.
Yeah, that's very important, and I'm glad you brought that up, because for Chelo, I'm not sure if she's more in tune with it or whatnot, but for her experiences, like she was saying, she's been able to go back and forth with this conversation, and I think the little creature guy that's next to Mother Ayahuasca, he even has like a little notepad, right, or something like that.
Yeah, he literally writes stuff down, and like he's like doing the most.
But he has pretty much like everything written down for the future, for all of that.
Yeah, he has like a little book or a notepad, and he's just like going back and forth like, oh, you want to know this? Like, let me look it up in the book and I'll tell you the answer, basically.
Yeah, insane. So talk to us one more scenario that you experience. I think it was about your dad, right? The one that you mentioned it to your dad, and then
I'll go into that.
Go into that, and then we'll go into once you told your dad what happened, and then I guess we can close it out. Let's go into that.
So in the first ayahuasca experience, I saw a lot of people, and one of the people that I saw was my dad. And me and my dad, we've always had like a pretty rough relationship growing up, but I feel like at this point we're at the best that we've ever been. And I remember that when I was a kid and my dad used to get me in trouble, he would literally give me like that sermon that you always hear from a Mexican parent. And I was like, oh my gosh, here we go again with the same story. And he would always tell me all these stories. And I've never doubted him. Like, I never thought like, oh my gosh, my dad is lying about this. But obviously, I don't know what it is to feel that because I've never been through that. And one of the things that my dad would always say was like, oh, you guys are so fortunate that you guys always have a plate of food on your table and that you have a roof over your head, all of that stuff. And which at times we're like, oh, like we don't care about that because we're kids or whatever. And in this specific, when I saw him, I remember my mom has a picture of my dad and his brother in their house in the living room. And my dad in that picture, he's probably no more than 10 years old. And when I'm doing ayahuasca, I see my dad and he looks exactly like the picture. And he's probably been wearing the same thing. And I remember him being in this dark room, sitting down on the floor, like with his knees bended, and he's just like crying. And he's like, he has his head down. And I can't go near him, but I can feel every little thing he felt. And I could just see him cry. And I remember that at that point, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so much like impotencia. That's a word. Because I couldn't do anything for him. Like, I could just see him cry and suffer. And I couldn't do anything. And I felt and I knew that was my dad. And I would just see him cry and cry and cry. And I remember that I felt everything that he was feeling. And that's when, to me, cuando me cayó el 20, that I was like, oh my God. Like, everything that he's been telling us all these years that he's been through, it's true. Not that I ever questioned it, but I literally felt everything he's felt throughout his life. And obviously, like, we all go through stuff and everybody's story is different. But I was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know what I would do if I were to go through the stuff he's been through. So fast forward, I saw somebody else from his family too. And this person told me that I had to give my dad a message. And time passed by, and there's a lot of things that we don't talk about between me and my dad, but I felt like I had to bring this subject or this topic up. And my mom knew everything since the beginning, so I kept telling her, like, like, I need to tell my dad, but I don't know when it's the right time to tell him because I don't know how to bring all of this up.
So the message that that you received for your dad, you told your mom?
Yeah.
Okay. And you guys didn't know when to tell your dad, when the right time was, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I guess I can tell you what the message was, because something weird is that my dad's never met his dad.
Okay.
So as soon as I see my dad crying and like feeling all these emotions, I see this face of an elderly man. I've never seen this man in my life, so I'm like, what are you doing here? Like, who are you? And he was like, oh, I'm here to tell you this, and I need you to tell this to your dad. So he starts telling me all these things, and then I come to find out that's my dad's dad. But this is the trippy part, because my dad's never met his dad. We don't even know what his name is. So this random viejito pops out in my ayahuasca trip telling me he's my dad's dad, and that I have to tell him a message, and then he just disappears like that.
And what was the message? Or can you share the message? If you don't want to share it, don't share it.
No, I don't want to say it, but
yeah.
So he tells me, like, oh, you have to tell this to your dad, right?
Okay.
So keep in mind, like, that's like something that my dad never talks about, because he obviously doesn't want to talk about it. So I was like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to bring this up? Because if to me that's a touchy subject, I don't even want to think about how he feels about it. So I kept telling my mom, like, oh my gosh, like, we have to tell him. So things worked out that almost a year later, something happened, and then we had to sit down and talk to my dad. And my mom was like, okay, like, this is the right time to tell him. So I go over to my mom's house. We were all sitting down and we're talking. And then my mom literally puts me on the spot and she's like, oh, la Chelo te tiene que decir algo. And I was like, oh my God. So then first I told him like, oh, I seen you like in my ayahuasca trip. And keep in mind, my dad doesn't, I mean, he believes it, but he doesn't believe it. So I'm like telling him this. And I really thought he was not going to believe in it because like I was like, oh my gosh, there's no point of me telling him all of this, especially the kid thing, because he's going to think that I'm tripping out or something. So
the kid thing about when you saw him as a kid.
Yeah, when I saw him as a kid, like I was like, he's just going to be like, ay, estás loca or something like that. So I start off with the kid thing and I was like, oh, I saw you on my ayahuasca trip. And he was like, oh, really? What did you see? And I was like, oh, I saw you when you were a kid. And then he stood there quiet. And then I told him, I was like, oh, I saw you like in this dark place. There was literally a light. It was like if a freaking light was just shining on him.
Like a spotlight, right?
Yeah, like a spotlight was shining on him. And he was on the floor. He was with his knees bending and he had his head down and he was just bawling his eyes out. And I told him all of this. And my dad starts bawling. Like, I've made my dad cry in the past and I've seen him cry. But I've never seen him cry like that. And me and my mom are looking at each other because we're like freaking out. Because then he starts going like this to his head. Like if he was remembering something that he didn't want to remember. And me and my mom were like freaking out. And then he starts going like this to his chest. And we're like, oh shit, he's having a freaking heart attack or something. And he's just crying. And my mom sits him down. And my dad was like, that exact way that you're describing me, that's how I used to cry when my brother passed away. And he's like, I used to go and freaking hide like on the side of the house and cry just like that by myself. And at that moment I was like, oh my God, like what the heck? And to me it was like there was no way for me to know that because obviously I was not born when the time when my dad was a kid, you know, like I was still not born. So he was crying and he was like, yeah, like that's true. Like I used to feel like this and this and this. Yada, yada, yada. So then I told him, I was like, and then I saw somebody that said that he was your dad. And he told me to tell you this. And I remember that I told him the message and he was just there like sitting down. Like he didn't know what to say. He was just there quiet. But the kid thing got to me, like seeing him and telling him what I saw and then him confirming that he was like that and like everything he felt and how he would cry like that got to me because I was like, there's no way. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So in some of these ayahuasca experience, you are going to be able to connect to, you know, people that have passed, right? And my personal belief is that what ayahuasca does is that it connects you to the spiritual realm, right? To another dimension that maybe, well, actually, as a matter of fact, right? So ayahuasca, they say, and I don't know all the scientific facts of this, right? But they say that with ayahuasca, it releases DMT, and what they say is that this DMT that it's being released, and I might be not 100% correct, right? But what they say is that the same experience that people have when they pass away, when they're passing away in their last moments, that it releases DMT and they see the light, right? They say that it's similar experience that when you do a ceremony of ayahuasca, that you get to experience all these different, I guess experiences, and you get to talk to people that you are not able to have that communication with in the physical realm, right? So that's another thing too, so just something to consider, right? And a lot of people are like, no, I don't even want to tap into that because it's you shouldn't, because it's el diablo. The thing is that we've been put into these type of thoughts, right? Why? Because maybe people don't really want us to know the truth out there, what life truly is about, right? And that's one of the main reasons why me and Chelo wanted to have this podcast. Why? Because eventually I want to have more people on to share more of their experiences, to put at least a little bit of our part for more and more people to know what ayahuasca truly is, and to take away from the bad name that psychedelics have, right? At least when it comes down to ayahuasca. But where I was going with it, the thing is that even though we're physical people, right? We're human beings, we're people. At the end of the day, we're spiritual beings, right? When we pass away, we go where we come from, right? Here in Earth, right? This is just temporarily. This is just a pit stop, right? So they say that when you do ayahuasca, you shouldn't just go once and that's it. Like, I've talked with certain people and they say, oh, yeah, I did it once and yeah, I'm good. I received the message. But the thing is that it shouldn't be like that. It should be a therapy session, right? It's some sort of like you're working with your spirit, because at the end of the day, you have to work on yourself more inside in order to be flourished out in the spirit and in the physical form. I've done it 3 times. I plan on going eventually. Like I said, the last 2 times were very, very physical, that I purged a lot. That's why I give it its time and its respect. It's not recreational at all. I don't know anybody that goes, oh, you know what, I'm gonna do ayahuasca freaking this day, tomorrow. Like, it's nothing like that, right? So I want people to take that away from their minds, that it's recreational. No, it's not. It's something that you should have very much respect towards too. Right? Do you feel like, oh, you know what?
Oh no, dude.
Right? It's not like a drug. It's not like
you.
Yeah, it's gonna humble you, right? Because it's a therapy. It's a therapy session. It's a healing experience for sure.
Yeah, and as you said, I feel like doing ayahuasca, you have to be like, it's not something that you want to do every weekend, or I wouldn't do it every weekend. But for me, I personally feel that I should do it by the end of the year. But, I mean, everybody's different. But for sure, it's not a recreational thing, because you're going to see a lot of things that, like, honestly, everybody that goes to do ayahuasca, they know what they're gonna see, and I feel like that's probably one of the reasons why people don't want to do it, o que le tienen miedo. Well, probably because many other reasons, but they don't want to face their past
and
their traumas.
Yeah, you know what? You bring up a good point, right? For instance, a lot of people are like, they don't want to go back to a specific time and day of their lives, right? And they're like, I already passed through that and that's it. But the thing is, like I was mentioning earlier, is something that even though maybe you don't want to think about or whatever the specific thing is to this person, but the thing is that there's still a lot of emotions bottled up inside of you that you need to heal from. And what ayahuasca does, and a lot of people, we've watched different stories and experiences, that what it does at times, it puts you back in those specific situations, and it forces you to surpass that fear, those experiences, so you can heal and continue moving forward in your life to be the best version of yourself, right? It's going to put you in those scenarios that maybe you had trauma, like Chelo, she faced having to see the baby that we were not fortunate to have here in the physical realm, but she was able to go back and tap in and have her and hold her. But after that, it brought closure to her that she was able to at least meet her and hold this baby that we were going to have, right? But it put her in that situation. And yeah, I that's why I tell a lot of my friends, close friends, right? Because I don't like to promote ayahuasca to just anybody. I know I try to tell some of my friends that I know they could benefit and receive something good out of it, right? Mm-hmm. Like people that I know that they're not going to have respect towards it, I don't even bother, right? But I tell some of my friends, hey, you know what? I think it'll be beneficial for you to at least try it once in your lifetime. What do you think, babe?
Yeah, for sure. It's not a recreational thing. And yeah, it does put you through probably all up, like everything, all your traumas that you've been through. Well, it depends, right? Because everybody's different. People can just have visions of animals or other things, not of their past or their their past. But if I were to tell you, like, oh, you're going to relive this moment again, you're going to be like, oh, hell no, I don't want to go do it. But I mean, once you're there, there's no way that you're going to be like, no, I don't want to see this, because you're going to see it regardless.
Yeah.
If you want to or not.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll share this one, right? I think it was my second time. Now that I remember, I think it was my second time that I did ayahuasca. I didn't really receive any messages, and Chelo can testify, and she can tell you what she saw or what she experienced once I got home, right? But for me, in this specific moment that I did, I think it was the second time I did ayahuasca, didn't really receive a lot of messages. But one of them I remember, I think I thought we were done already with the ceremony, and I texted Chelo, hey, you know what, we're done, and we're going to be heading out soon. But for some reason, like, when we were done, I fell back into the journey of ayahuasca again, and I fell back into it, and I was just kind of like, oh man, I started feeling it again. And I remember all in my mind was Chelo, right? It was just Chelo, like, oh man, I told her already that we were done, and I was back into feeling the medicine again. But then what happened at that point, I saw two playing cards. I saw one card of me, and then I saw another card of Chelo. And at that time, both of the cards flew out towards the floor. And once they landed on the floor, both of the playing cards of Chelo and myself and Angel got together, and it became one. And that's when I received the message that Chelo was my soulmate. I received the message that Chelo was my soulmate. And something at that time of a relationship, Chelo nor myself had told each other that we loved each other at all, right?
Yeah, ni tú ni yo.
Yeah, so I remember, like, something else that got presented to me, as simple as it can be. They told me, if you love her, just tell her. Like, why are you holding up? And Chelo hadn't mentioned it either, right? But it got presented to me, like, just tell her you love her. Like, why are you guys playing this game? And I'm not sure if that was the time when I came rushing through the door. Was it that one, you think?
Yeah,
I think
it was
huh?
that time. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll kind of pass it over to Chelo. So that time we come, I get dropped off, and I opened the door, and at that time I felt like really throwing up. I still had the medicine in my system, so I open the door, come rushing through the living room into the backyard, and I throw up. But you can take it to what you saw when I came in.
Okay, so Angel came in, he opened the door, he came in. I was laying down on the couch because I was waiting for him since he texted me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, when is he going to get here? Because he told me he was on his way. And I think he ended up texting me, like, once you guys were on the car or something like that. Anyways, he comes in. He literally comes in, like, with the meanest looking face. And he just looks pissed. And I was like, what the fuck happened? Like, what's wrong? Like, what happened between, like, did you see something? Like, are you mad about something? Are you mad at me? Like, I didn't know why you looked mad, but you just looked mad. And keep in mind, like, Angel and I, we hardly ever argue or anything. It's like, it's rare. So I was like, what the heck is going on? So Angel comes in, like, looking all mad. He doesn't say a word. Like, it's like he saw me and he didn't even acknowledge me. That's why I thought he was mad at me. So he just walks in. He looks all mad and stuff. He opens the sliding door and he walks outside. And at this point, I'm like, should I even go outside? Should I just let him be? Like, I didn't even know what to do. So I just hear him go like, ah, like really loud in the backyard. And I was like, what the fuck? And by this point, then I walked out because I was like, okay, there's something going on, because why is he even screaming like that? And I go over to him and he's over here in the backyard, like freaking puking. And I was like, what the heck? And he's like, babe, like, I just want to sit down y que no sé qué. So he sits down and he passes out. You literally passed out in a chair. And Caro was with you guys. And then Caro and I were like looking at each other like, what just happened? And she was like, did you hear that? And we both heard you scream.
Really?
Yes. We both heard you scream.
Damn, that's crazy.
And I was like, I don't know. And you were freaking passed out, so I couldn't even ask you. And then when you freaking woke up, you were like in and out of it. Como que todavía tenías la medicina, todo lo que daba. And when you woke up, you're like, babe, I need to tell you something. And then that's when you're like, oh, I love you, que no sé qué. and then you kept going like back into it. But I remember seeing you like all freaking mad, and I heard you clearly. I heard you scream.
That's crazy. Yeah, I don't remember that scream at all. I remember me throwing up, but I literally don't remember that scream that you guys say that I did. But apparently, I just screamed, and that's when I purged out. But like I said, it's just it might have been a lot of bottled up emotions that I finally let out. And after, at least for my experience, after ayahuasca, I feel relieved. Like I feel in a way cleansed. I feel like a lot of weight has been removed.
Like a little feather. That's how I feel.
Yeah, and so yeah, like Chelo mentioned, I sat back down and I didn't tell her, "Oh, I love you." Like no, I told her, you know what? Like I was told that, you know, just to why hold it in, right? To tell you indeed, hey, you know what? I do love you. And then after that, pretty much because of ayahuasca, it put me in a situation just to be real with her and just to tell her straight out that, hey, you know what, Chelo, I do love you. And Chelo told me I love you back. And ever since then, it's just been a lot. Well, we tell each other all the time.
Oh,
you
lovey-dovey.
Yeah, no, we tell each other all the time. But yeah, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
You the first time you did ayahuasca, you also saw my dad?
Yes, I've seen your dad and I talked to him both times.
Both of your ceremonies,
Yes.
right?
And go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say before you forget, is there something that you can share from the first ceremony or no?
Well, I know he went in depth into like stuff about the future.
Yeah.
And then was it the first time or the second time that he told? I think it was the both times that he told me to tell you stuff. That he was okay and all that.
All right, but you asked him like why he was presenting to yourself, right?
Okay, yeah. So let's go a little bit back in time again. So, when I met Angel's dad, Angel and I had already been together for a while, and then we went to Sinaloa, and that's when I met him for your sister's quince. But we never had a relationship of like, oh my god, we never had a relationship like. We barely were we were basically strangers. We didn't know each other. Like I remember when we went to Sinaloa, I would say hi to him and bye to him, but we would never really talk like that. Like I remember he would always stare around, pero nunca, like I feel like he would always keep to himself. And when it was ayahuasca, I remember seeing him, and when I saw him cuando te dije que he looked younger. So I saw him looking younger, but I knew it was your dad. And I was like, in my head, I was like, why is he coming up to me when we've never really had a relationship? Like, why is he here? And then that's when he told me like, oh, like, basically like, I need to talk to you and I need to tell you stuff. And that's when he started going into stuff about the future. And then he said, like, what I had to tell you and all that. But honestly, I feel like both times that I've done ayahuasca, like, I've always believed in reincarnation. And I feel like both times that I've done it, it's just, like, more obvious that does exist.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, because you see, once if you guys ever experience ayahuasca, you're gonna see that life, it's a recurring thing.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And at times, certain loved ones even come back into your life. Right? What do you say?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, insane. One last message, babe, that you would like to leave, or something that we haven't touched on.
I feel like people just like to talk about ayahuasca when they're like, oh, this is bad or this is this, when they've never even done it. So, si no lo han hecho, mejor ni digan nada.
Yeah, learn, right?
Yeah, like learn, go do it, and then you can talk about it.
Yeah,
because
just like a lot of people would like to freaking, learn about specific things, about like social media, memes, like things like that. Hey, or politics, just things that are not meaningful, right? The things that are not meaningful. Hey, you know what? Learn all these different traditions that we've lost, through past generation. At the beginning of the podcast, I mentioned the government, the media. It's never gonna tell you, oh, you know what? I almost forgot about this. We can touch. Oh, so man, I have a lot of thoughts now running, right? So So the reason why the media and all of this different platforms don't share all of this in a positive manner is because these plant medicines have healed a lot of people. Maybe I know people that have gotten cured of cancer. Next time, maybe that we can share another experience. Maybe even Chelo has had surgery in one of these ceremonies. There's so many stories, right? But the main purpose, at least from my end, right, I wanted to share this experiences so more people are aware. And I know friends, and I've taken friends that have done these ceremonies, that they have their own personal journey that they've experienced, and each story that they've shared, freaking amazing, right? Chelo did her second ceremony, and even that, it's another freaking experience itself.
My mom did it too.
Yeah.
We convinced her to do it.
Yeah. So one last thing, babe. I think that was a good message. Before you even speak bad on it, hey, you know what? Hear about it, but don't speak down on it, right?
No.
Yeah.
Like, just to touch on base on that, and then I'll say my closing comment. But you know that girl, the murder mystery and makeup girl, La Bailey Sarian. I love watching her stuff, right? And in one of her podcasts, she was like, oh, when people go do their little ayahuasca just because they're heartbroken, que no sé qué. And I freaking went back on the freaking thing, and I was like, this bitch has probably never done it. She's just saying that. But just people say little things without even doing it. So, like I said, if you haven't done it, mejor ni diga nada.
Yeah.
But I feel like, I guess my last thing that I can say is, we've all been through things. And I mean, we're all here. You've been through your own stuff. I've been through my own stuff. Everybody goes through their own journey. And I feel like we all need healing to be a better person and to reach our higher potential. And if you're ever questioning or thinking of doing ayahuasca and you're like, oh, but what if I see this or that? Like, just think about that you already went through that. And you surpassed that and you lived through it. Even if you felt like you were going to die. Like you overcame that obstacle and you made it. And if you're just like, oh my gosh, I don't want to relive this or that. Like, you're not going to die. You're going to make it out. And you're probably going to understand why it happened to you. And I feel like, I remember this psychologist that I used to go to. She would always tell me, like, we all always say, like, oh my gosh, why me? Why me? Why me? Why does all these bad things happen to me all the time? But every time that something bad happens to you, there is a good outcome, even if it's the worst of the worst. And I remember her telling me that, and I was like, how dare her even tell me that? And I feel like now I understand why she said that with time. I mean, obviously I didn't understand it at the time, but I feel like if you ever feel like you need healing and you want to do ayahuasca and like your fears of like facing your past are stopping you, just remember that you already overcame that. Like, you're not going to die. You're okay. You're alive. You're here. Like, you just like, you might relive that moment, but you're going to understand why.
Cool. All right. So with that message, I just want to say that eventually what I want to do is I want to be able to have different guests that have done ceremony. Maybe eventually, not sure. Maybe I can bring a shaman here. That would be freaking mind-blowing, right? But I think what I want to do eventually have different people that have done ayahuasca to share their stories. That way people are more aware of what it's all about. And just their stories, like I've mentioned, have been incredible. So eventually, hopefully, maybe in this podcast and Hoy No Más platform, I'm able to make it into a series so that we can share more of this plant medicine, this knowledge, this ancient knowledge that we've lost through history. And I really, really believe that more people should know about this. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. All right, babe. Thank you once again for coming. This is your second time into the podcast. Maybe we have another one. You can share a little bit more of your second ceremony. But for now, thank you, babe, for coming in.
You're welcome. Maybe I'll just be here for the whole ayahuasca once.
Yeah. What do you think of the podcast so far? Just in general, how am I doing?
A 10 out of 10, babe.
Yeah.
Legit.
All right, babe. All right, babe. I was going to call you guys babe. All right. So once again, like I always like to say, it's a bigger risk, not taking a risk. Follow your dreams. We only live once. Make it a best one. Make it a good one.
Bye, guys.